Welcome back to the Imperfectionist Podcast. My name is David Rendell. For those of you who've been paying attention, it's been a little bit of a long break. Got busy with speaking, which is a good thing, and then got busy being sick with some kind of mystery illness, which is not a good thing. So we're back in the new year at the Imperfectionist, and we have a special guest, Mike Maddock. Before I introduce him, though, I want to introduce something fun I got for Christmas from my mom. My mom doesn't like getting me Christmas gifts because I bought them a house once, and so it's hard for them to reciprocate at that level. And so she got me something super cool that I'm excited about, and I thought we could kind of run it in the background of the podcast. So she got me basically an hourglass, but like an hourglass of pink goo. So it kind of slowly drips down. And we've measured it. It takes about an hour, although the last half hour, pretty weak, but it's still going, it's still going. And so we're going to count it. So I'm going to put this back here.
My mom, all my mom got
kind of let that run in the background. Goo. What'd you say, Mike?
I got for Christmas is a pink goo timer.
Yeah. She got me some other cool stuff too. Also, as you know, and Mike will ask you this later, who are you not sponsored by? We won't do it right away, but as you all know, I am not sponsored by Liquid Death Mountain Water, and today I don't have a can of Liquid Death Mountain Water. I have a glass of water in a Liquid Death cup called the Pint of No Return. So my daughter got me these for Christmas, and it's my favorite new thing.
Is this your reverse engineering way of getting a sponsor, David? Because I think it's brilliant.
Delicious and refreshing. It's acknowledging, this is the Imperfectionist Podcast, it's acknowledging that I don't. And if they would like to do it at some point, that's exactly what it is. But if not, it's fun, and it's getting me gifts. So today our guest is Mike Maddock. I'm going to tell you a story about us, and then I'm going to get to Mike, but I want to introduce him in an imperfectionist way. So Mike and I actually tried to do this last year when I was just starting the podcast, and that tells you how important Mike is to me. I was like, one of the first people that I thought of when I thought of the Imperfectionist Podcast is Mike, and I was like, I got to get Mike on the podcast. So I call him up, and he's cool, so he's like, yeah, let's do it. So I come up here to my studio, and Mike goes to his studio. It's kind of the summer, right, Mike? Kind of the summerish kind of time.
Summer of 1972. It took us a long time to get together.
So it's last summer. No, Mike, the summer of 2024. It's last summer, and it doesn't work. I'm on. Mike can't hear me. I can't hear him. He can't see me. I can't see him. It's all a big mess. And there's two reasons why it's a big mess. And one of the reasons is me, and the other reason is him, right? And we take full responsibility. We each take full responsibility for this. And it's because of our imperfections. So I'll acknowledge mine first. What I'm supposed to do when I'm going to have a guest on the podcast, and I'm not going to make excuses for myself. What I'm supposed to do is send this little email. And I didn't even have to make the email. We're going to talk about that in a second. My brother-in-law, Dan, who's an expert in audio and video, and has been very successfully doing that for 20 plus years, created an email for me for the platform that I use called Riverside. And I'm just supposed to forward that to the person that's going to be on the podcast for me. And it tells them things that matter, like Riverside, the platform I use, doesn't work on Safari. You need to open it up on Chrome. And, make sure you got headphones, and make sure you got a microphone, and make sure it's quiet. And Mike's a pro. He's on the computer all the time. So some of those would have been relevant. Some of them weren't. But I didn't send that because I'm like, whatever. And that's one of my imperfections. I'm like let's do the podcast. The details will work them out kind of guy. I'm a big picture guy. I'm not a detail guy. I'm not a perfectionist. I'm an imperfectionist. On Mike's side, same thing. Mike has an assistant who basically manages his life. As he told me earlier this week, he didn't even know he was on the podcast because she scheduled it and he didn't. And I love her because she's Stephanie and my wife is Stephanie. And in a weird twist of fate, the girl I dated before her in high school was Stephanie. So I get accused of having a Stephanie thing. But I've stuck with this Stephanie for 30 years, so I feel like that exonerates me a little bit from anything. So Mike should have gotten Stephanie involved, but he was a big boy and thought, I can do this myself, and he couldn't. So his computer needed updates. Chrome wasn't installing. It was installing, but it wasn't updating. And we just had to give up. We were on we hung out for a long time, about 90 minutes, just failing over and over and over and over. And just a couple of minutes of preparation and organization and systematization would have won the day for us. But unfortunately, Mike and I both share the same imperfections, which is that we like the big picture. And we're not as worried about the details. And in this case, the details turned out to really matter. So there's 2 lessons there for the Imperfectionist podcast. And that is Mike and I, and Mike more so than me, are very successful people. And yet we're still really bad at some stuff. Mike's going to kind of try to tone it down. Come on, Mike, play with me here. This is yes and.
One of us is really successful.
On the improv.
Yes and. Yes and you're very successful.
Yeah. So we haven't talked about this a lot on the podcast. One of the ways to manage your imperfections, you don't need to fix them. You need to partner with people who are strong where you're weak. Mike partners with Stephanie and has for how many years, Mike? How many years have you and Stephanie?
I should know the answer. It's going on a few decades now.
Yeah.
And she knows more about me than I know about me.
Also, great last name, Savage. Yeah. Savage, Stephanie Savage.
Savage, Savage, yeah.
So, and I partner with my brother-in-law, Dan Ford, who works for an awesome company called Road Trip Nation that helps people find their own road in life. And he's been doing video and managing things for them and producing things for them at a very high level and working with things like NPR and big companies like AT&T. So Dan's a pro. He helped me set up this studio. I wouldn't look as good as I do, even though I can't look good, but I wouldn't have the lighting. I didn't know you put lighting behind you, but faced the other way and separate yourself. And he's always telling me I'm not in the middle and I need to scoot forward. Dan knows, and I didn't use Dan. I didn't follow up. And even Dan would have sent the email if I just would have asked him to. And so that's a lot of times people get stuck on this where you have to fix your weaknesses. But one of the cheat codes, one of the tips is, and Mike does it and I do it, and sometimes we forget, but we're not fixing our weaknesses. We're partnering with people who are strong where we're weak. And to Mike's point, I mean, for 20 something years, maybe 30 years, you can have a relationship with somebody who they do what you don't do, and also you do what they don't do. You don't have to get better. You just need relationships with people who can do what you don't do. But that requires admitting that you can't do it, or that you won't do it, or that you don't want to do it.
Yeah, quick build on that. As far as Stephanie goes, I was told by someone that worked with me that I needed an assistant about 30 years ago. And I said, I don't need an assistant. She's like, you need an assistant. So she became my assistant. The problem was she was so much like me that both of us never got anything done.
Yeah.
Then I hired another assistant. By the way, Liz, who's still a dear friend of mine, went on to doing what she could do really well in our company. I hired another assistant, Renee, who was so much like me that neither of us got anything done. And then I went and hired an executive recruiter and said, okay, this isn't working. And he had me answer a questionnaire listing all of my weaknesses. And he interviewed people whose strengths were my weaknesses. That person happened to be Stephanie. And I remember the moment when I tried to take something away from her, because I thought to myself, who would want to do that? I can't make her do that. And
it's the worst.
She got angry at me and said, what are you doing? That's my job. I love doing that. Why would you want to do that? And it was like this tremendous weight was lifted off my shoulders. So I'm a big believer. She has made my life and my family's life and my friend's life and our associates' life so much better because she keeps me away from my own weaknesses.
And that's a great point too, because affiliation has 2 pieces. One is partner with people who are strong where you're weak. So to your point, initially you tried to partner with people who were strong where you were strong, and that's nice, but it doesn't complement, right? And it doesn't accomplish what you need. You have another person who hates doing the same tasks that you hate, or avoids them, or doesn't do them very well, or whatever happens to be. So we need to partner with people who are strong where we're weak. We do need people who are like us The other part of affiliation is find people who are weird like you, but those aren't necessarily your partners. You just need some people who get you enough to keep you from feeling like there's something wrong with you. You need people who accept you and appreciate you for who you are. So we need to partner with people who are strong where we're weak, but we also need people who are weird like us. And that strategic partnership, oftentimes in work, is where we partner with people who are strong where we're weak. But one of the reasons I like Mike is because we are so similar. And instead of Mike telling me to tone it down or dial it back or be more normal or be more like everybody else, Mike is a person who allows me and encourages me to even be more of myself than other people might. And those are important relationships as well, or else we feel like an outsider our whole life. And that's tough. Some people can thrive that way, but most people sooner or later need at least somebody who gets them. And so those are the two sides of affiliation.
Dave, I knew you felt comfortable being with me when you told an advisory board you spoke to one of my CEO groups earlier this week about someone that had a sexual relationship with Excel. I'm like, he went there. He feels comfortable. I feel complete. So I'm glad we're friends.
Yeah, I knew I didn't have to. Well, that's maybe just me in general, not worrying about what other people think. So, Mike, I gave them kind of our imperfection introduction, but tell them a little bit. Mike's books, you can see them in the back there, and I've read both of them, Free the Idea Monkey, Plan D. I learned about Mike at the New York Stock Exchange. We were both speaking for an entrepreneurs organization event, I think in 2012.
It was the same day that Occupy Wall Street happened.
It was big. It was happening outside the doors.
We're on the rooftop watching people march. I still don't know why.
Yeah. Mike and I had to fend off some people who wanted to murder us. And I had terrible laryngitis for the first time in my life, which is really bad as a speaker. But I made it through and I met Mike and I loved his speech. And to be clear, I don't love people's speeches. I'm a speaker. And so I'm very critical of other people, not to them, but in my head, I'm like, oh, that wasn't very good. I wouldn't have done it that way. And I really liked Mike's talk, which isn't as common as you might think as a speaker. And so I was like, I need to connect with this guy and I like what he's up to. So tell them a little bit about yourself, give them a little Mike Maddock background. And then I want to jump into the Idea Monkey stuff, but start with who's Mike and what's Mike up to?
So what can I say about myself? In no particular order, I'm a starter, not a finisher. I'm pretty good at starting things and really lousy at finishing them. So that's number one. I'm an entrepreneur. My definition of entrepreneurship is people that take full responsibility for things that they've started. Another way to say that is that if the bank gets mad, they come and take your house.
Yeah.
I've started 7 different businesses, a couple of which have been successful.
Let's stop there for a second. Talk us through the 7. Let's go linear, maybe. Talk us through the 7, starting with.
Well, what? Not to take up too much time. Most of my businesses are in marketing, branding. I pivoted 20 years ago to move a branding firm into the innovation consulting space, which was a great ride and a wonderful business. Somewhere along the way, I decided that I was clever enough to start a venture fund that would invest in startups and connect them with big businesses that didn't know how to start up. So I saw it as the third circle in a Venn diagram, innovation consulting firm, company that is being disrupted, small company that could save them. That was a complete disaster. We wound up investing in 12 companies or 13 companies, had 7 exits, but I didn't know enough about, venture to raise enough money. And I mean, my friends were saying, how come you're not asking for more money? I'm like, we don't need more money. We needed more money. It was a great team. My partner in that is now the chief futurist at the largest consulting firm in the world. So it wasn't a question of having good ideas and quality people. It was, we didn't have a team that was in balance, which leads me to my latest business, which is called Flourish Advisory Boards, which essentially takes the idea of operator and visionary, Roy and Walt Disney, which is my first real book, Free the Idea Monkey, to focus on what matters most, the Idea Monkey and Ringleader, and expands it. It turns out there are 6 different roles that you need around your executive table, your advisory board, your board of directors, The roles are the operator, the strategist, the rainmaker, the visionary, the futurist, and the orchestrator. And they can all be CEOs, they can all be COOs, but they see the world differently. And so instead of having a bunch of people around you that are hammers looking for nails, you're intentionally surrounding yourself with a screwdriver, a hammer, a drill, and that would have changed. That would have changed the outcome of a number of my businesses. It would have created way less suffering in the lives of the people that I love and I've worked with. And so that's what I'm doing today, putting together virtual groups of CEOs that all see problems differently. And it's been just wonderful.
It's a structured way to partner with people who are strong where you're weak, and also to find people who are weird like you, right? So it's a beautiful thing. You jumped through it, but a lot of people don't know. This is your first time on the podcast. Start with Ringleader, Idea Monkey. What are the strengths and weaknesses of each? And then let's jump into some of the strengths and weaknesses of those other groups. But that's the first one that really caught me. And I realized I was an Idea Monkey, and that every time I got to a point in my career where I needed to be a ringleader, I started to lose interest. I started to lose effectiveness.
Yeah.
And I just thought about it as something I needed to fix. Fortunately, I saw it as an opportunity to move away. So I went from the COO of a nonprofit to being a college professor, because a college professor is literally an idea monkey. You just talk about ideas. You don't have any application. You don't need any execution. You don't need any implementation other than to kind of show up to class. And you're not responsible for anybody's performance in the room. They could all go out and become complete losers, but as long as you graded the papers and did the tests. And so I left formal organizational management, fortunately for me, and we call that alignment, and found a better fit for me. But I didn't realize, I really need a ringleader. And I think when I had those people in my life, they were just critical of me for my ideas and wanted me to be more execution oriented. But I'm getting too far into it because people don't even know the definition. So define an idea monkey, define a ringleader, and tell us a little bit about what's good and bad about, or strong and weak about each of those people.
Yeah, and let me just make one point. So before I get into it, when you're a hardcore visionary, divergent, quick start idea monkey like David or me, anything just to the right of you looks like an operator. Someone that's just a
right. Whoa, that person really gets it done.
Yeah, knows how to use a spreadsheet. They must be an operator because they're to the right of me. That is a trap, and that is a trap that I fell into, and I'll talk about that more later. But
no, let me jump on that. That's good.
Okay.
I did some personality testing once for one of my clients, and it was just the basics: Myers-Briggs, introvert, extrovert, sensing versus intuition, stuff like that. So we're going through it, and this one guy's like, I don't know, this test says I'm real introverted, and I don't agree with that. I think the people I work with would tell you I'm a wild man. I'm out of control. I'm pretty.
He worked in an engineering firm.
Pretty nuts. You are so close.
Actuaries?
You're even closer. I said, what department do you work in here? And he goes, accounting.
Yeah.
And I was like, right. Compared to, and this is a great thing for self-awareness that you're saying, and that's why I wanted to jump on it. Oftentimes our self-awareness comes from looking at somebody who we don't know where they are on the spectrum of all the way over there to all the way over here. And we just go, that person's more operational than me. That person's more execution oriented than me. Therefore, they must be this different kind of person, instead of maybe they're just a tiny bit different. And oftentimes what you're really looking for is, no, you need somebody who is objectively on another end of the scale to really balance you out. And I think that's crucial.
So I'll talk about idea monkey and ringleader, and then I'll tell you a story that'll build on what you just said.
Yeah.
My idea monkey is my word for visionaries. They're on the Colby, they're quick starts, like a 3-3-9-3. They're ready, fire, aim. They're very divergent. They make meaning by connecting lots of ideas. They run 10 experiments before an operator runs one. They're fast fail. They want to fail their way into success very, very quickly. They have jazz hands. They can convince you that this idea is the biggest idea ever. And every once in a while, they're right. And every great organization that disrupts an industry is led by Richard Branson, a visionary, a disruptive visionary. And then there are the operators. Operators are, stay steady, stay the course. They're high fact finders. They're high follow throughs on the Colby. They're from Missouri. They're from the show me state. They want you to prove that an idea is better before they will take a chance on it.
They want data. They want information.
Stay the course, stay steady. Their life is about making what they did yesterday incrementally better, just a little bit better than it was the day before. And those are the people that tend to be hired to scale large businesses, because you have a system, you have a product, you have a sausage machine. Now you just need someone that knows how to run it. And so they're both magical, and at the right moment in time.
And the operator is the ringleader. When you say that, that's
correct,
kind of interchangeable.
Yeah, the ringleader is the operator. So a great operator was Jack Welch. He ran GE. He Six Sigma'd them. Everything was about process, getting 1 degree better. He made them famous for being productive until they weren't. And when I was hired to be on the advisory board for General Electric, it had been 13 years since they launched a new product, service, or business model based on one of Thomas Edison, the founder's greatest visionary ever.
That's where General Electric starts. Yeah.
But could they Six Sigma. And when Jack Welch left the company, they lost a couple $100 billion in market cap because they had become too out of balance in terms of operation excellence. And it's complicated. I mean, they had quarterly Wall Street numbers they had to hit, so they were running against it. So it's a very complicated situation.
But that's one of the, we talk about alignment. People who create something oftentimes need to be an idea monkey. People who manage it to meet Wall Street expectations tend to be ringleaders. You can't manage something to meet Wall Street expectations that hasn't been created or isn't in some way successful. But you also, you can also rarely meet Wall Street expectations with the same kind of behavior. I mean, Edison made all sorts of outrageous bets. I talk about him when we talk about persistence and stubbornness. He had all sorts of great ideas, and he had all sorts of terrible ideas that completely failed.
Right.
He's not a day-to-day manager of an effective 21st century organization.
That's right. Someone had to lay the power lines and create the systems and figure out what electricity costs and how.
Well, he was famously wrong in his argument with Tesla about AC versus DC. Yeah. Like, he went all in and fought him in the press. And I think they even murdered some elephants along the way to prove that electricity was dangerous. And he was just 100% wrong. But we forget all that because he invented the light bulb. But there's huge weaknesses with Idea Monkey. There's huge weaknesses with Ringleader, but there's also massive strengths on both sides as well. And we oftentimes miss those in our lionizing of the one like Edison and lionizing the other like Jack Welch. And they both, though, were imperfect. That's why we talk about them on this podcast.
This isn't about being right or wrong as much as it's about seeing things differently at the right moment in time. And so here's the story. I wrote a best-selling book called Free the Idea Monkey. David,
up in the corner there.
To focus on what matters most. You heard me speak about that. Mm-hmm. And at the time, the little consulting firm that I'd started with West Douglas in 1991 had gone from 10 million to 15 million to 20 million in revenue inside of about 3 years. We were killing it. And then we went from 20 million to 18 million to 16 million to 15 million to 12 million inside of about 2 years. And I lost my mind. And I called a consultant who came in and did a test on all of the different executives around the team. Now, keep in mind, these people are now running giant organizations. They were many of them. They were smart, and I loved them, and I laughed with them, and they were my favorite people in the world. And when we got the test result back, I was shocked to find out that everyone, including my partner, the ringleader, were all idea monkeys except for 2 people. They were all quick starts. So what would happen is, under pressure, The way we saw problems was to blow shit up, reinvent it. We need something new. We got to pivot. And so we were great at pivoting, which is how we got into the innovation game. And we were really, really bad at executing with precision. Headline, we were out of balance and I could not see it. So that goes to the point of like everyone, if you're hard left on Idea Monkey or hard right on Ringleader, whichever direction you want to go, anyone just to the east or west of you feels like, well, they must be a ringleader. And that's the mistake I made. So
well, I want to say something about that too. Let's keep going with that. I just thought of a good analogy. I'm 6'6", and so people go, "Oh my gosh, you're so tall." And one of the things I talk about is that situations determine how you seem. If I walk out onto the court of an NBA basketball game,
yeah, you look short.
People go, "Who's that cute little fella out there?" And I'm also very thin. I do long distance running, so my weight right now is like 190 at 6'6". That's a little bit outrageous. So you'd almost be like, "Who is that tiny little maybe female volleyball player out there?" Like. So, and these guys are full grown men, right? These guys, have had a beard since they were 18 years old. So again, and this is a huge part of self-awareness, what you feel like has a lot to do with who you're around. And to your point, when the other people around you are still tall, but a little bit taller, or still tall, but a little bit shorter, we sometimes make the wrong adjustment instead of going, no, who's actually short? Who's actually tall?
That's right.
What are the percentiles? Also, say a little bit, you've been saying Kolbe, and I know that, but awareness is a huge part of this process we're talking about. And I love the Kolbe assessment. Tell them the Kolbe, and I think are you talking about the Kolbe A? And tell them a little bit about why you think that's a good one.
Okay, so I love different assessments, and our team loved them, and we use Myers-Briggs forever.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite party tricks is guessing your Myers-Briggs type after a drink or two. I'm pretty good at it. It's like guessing someone's weight at a fair or something. But I like Kolbe even better. Kolbe is essentially the best way I can say it is what you do instinctively, how you behave, how under pressure or during the best day of your life, and it is the same. And Kolbe helps me understand how someone's going to behave when they're under pressure, which is what you want to know about your executive team, for example. So when you're killing it, you want to know how they're going to behave. And when you're getting killed, you want to know how they're going to behave.
And that's Kolbe. Yep.
Kolbe.com, KOLBE.com. I don't
Kathy?
have any.
Is that the founder, Kathy?
Yeah, Kathy Kolbe. I'm not affiliated with them.
We're not selling anything, but I think assessments are important.
Enneagram,
and I like that one.
Yeah, I like the Enneagram, strengths finders. I mean, there's different ways that you can toggle these together. The point is that here's a simple example. If you have been famous, if you're running a company and you have been profitable for decades, and all of a sudden you have a quarter where you're not making any money, you're having another quarter where you're losing money, and the bank says, "Look, we're going to take your house if you don't figure this out."
Back to the house.
If you went to an executive team and said, "We need to be the profitable, or the bank's going to come and take my house, what should we do?" The operator would say, "Give me the balance sheet and the P&L. I will cut our way into profitability. I'll have you profitable next week." The strategist will say, we might be measuring the wrong thing. I mean, maybe we need to pull a different lever. Let's look at the KPIs and find a KPI that'll help us get to profitability. The Rainmaker will say, it's all about the pipeline. We need to do some whale killing. We need to raise our prices. We need to get the work done faster. It's all about sales. The visionary, that's me and you, Dave, will say, we need to change everything. We need to acquire someone. We need to pivot. We need innovation. We need to launch someone.
Start over.
Something. The futurist will say something like, well, what about our tech stack? AI could do something that would help us become more profitable. I've got 4 or 5 ideas. Just give me, $50,000 and I'll get us to profitability with technology. And the orchestrator, one of my favorites, might say something like, we have a trust problem. This is a culture issue. We're not holding each other accountable. We love each other too much. Until we're willing to take the risk of holding each other accountable, we're never going to be profitable. So we need to fix that first. So the question is, who's right? And the answer is, everybody is right at a different moment in time.
Right.
But unless you have all of those lenses, all those people around the table, you're going to be a hammer looking for a nail. And here's the thing, that's called the law of instrument. And it was developed by Maslow. You've all heard of Maslow. But the thing,
Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Yep, that was
right.
big in psychology. Yep.
The insidious thing about the law of instrument is that we actually change problems to make them look more like nails. So if we're a hammer, that sure looks like a nail to me. That's a screw. No, I think it's a nail. Bam, bam, bam. And so
or if you hit it hard enough, it's going to become a nail.
That's right. So exactly. So anyway, my big aha was that I can't trust myself to determine who's the strategist, who's the rainmaker, because a CV or a resume really doesn't tell the tale. You said yourself, Dave, you were like an operator, and then a professor, and but did that really say what you were born to do? And so I use tests, Colby primarily, so that when I put together these advisory boards, which are virtual and they're amazing, I have a balanced group of people looking at each other's challenges. And that's how you bust through plateaus more quickly, by seeing that thing that you were sure was a nail as a screw or something different.
Yeah. So you went from, tell them, I think the Roy and Walt Disney is a good illustration. So tell them about that, and how Roy was the ringleader and Walt was the idea monkey. And we all know about Walt. I think a lot of people don't know about Roy, because I think that example helps. But then tell them how you went from, because you just kind of gave them new names and then you broadened it. You need more than just a ringleader and idea monkey. You have more types. Tell them how you made that transition to, there's more to this. I'm on the right track, but there's more pieces here. But help people understand it with a quick explanation of invisible Roy, right? And very, very visible Walt. His name's on everything. A lot of people, I would guess 90% of people have never heard of Roy Disney and didn't even know that he existed.
Yeah. So there's I grew up in a family that didn't have a lot of money.
Same.
So I always I loved Disney, and I would nag my mom about going to Disney, and she showed me a black and white picture out in California of me in a stroller. And she's like, "You've already been there. We can't afford to go back." And so I became obsessed.
And that's the lame one in California too. That's the one the size of a county fair.
A little bit obsessed with Disney. And I started reading about Disney, and I love Walt Disney. He's a visionary. He gave us the talking mouse, animation, the happiest place on earth. I mean, Walt Disney. And the more I looked into it, the more I realized that it was Roy, his brother, that made all that happen. There's a story. It's Monday morning, and here comes Walt, chain smoking as they did. He's probably got a little animated bird on his shoulder. He's whistling. He goes up to
We are not sponsored today by Marlboro.
We are not.
Mike's apparently a big fan. Big fan.
He gets up to his office, and there's Roy, and there's a blackboard filled with like a chalkboard filled with math equations and headlines. And Roy turns to him. He's all disheveled, and he says, Roy turns to Walt and says, "Walt, I've been here all weekend. I've been thinking about your little idea. You know that little idea that you had on Friday afternoon is going to cost us $2 million? $2 million. And Walt's response is, Roy, why do you bother me with these insignificant details? And so what happened is Walt had lots of ideas, but Roy was the one that was able to allow them to afford it. Side note, at one point, Disney was so close to bankruptcy that he cashed out the cash value of his life insurance plan just to keep the place afloat. So he was willing to take risks, so many risks, that he almost went bankrupt. But his brother Roy was the one who could create the systems, the accounting, the operational strategy to create the happiest place on earth.
To translate the vision into reality. That's a simple way to think about it. Somebody goes, I've got this great idea, but you never hear about Walt Disney if he doesn't have a Roy, because he just, keeps having ideas.
Yeah.
A real idea monkey doesn't even stay on the same idea for very long.
That's correct.
Keep having ideas with no one to turn them into a reality. There's idea monkeys we've never heard of because they didn't have that partnership.
Yeah.
Right?
So just to answer your second question, what I did was, meanwhile, I don't know if I told you, but you have inspired me because of how long it took us to get this going after the first attempt to actually have a podcast myself. And the podcast is going to be called Your Seat at the Table. And the person I'm going to do it with started a company around the same time I did and now has 13,000 employees. And because he is a stone cold operator. So I've watched John go from 0 to 13,000 people by finding a formula and being just doggedly persistent in replicating that formula. Well, I've started 7 businesses, some of which have been okay. So I've been watching this the better part of my life. And I after the incident at where we went from 20 to 15, I realized I was surrounded by people that I loved but saw problems the same way I did. I started to study other boards and advisory boards, and I noticed that, the visionary is great at like pivoting and coming up with ideas. The operator is great at efficiency, but it needs to be someone to pick the ideas. To your point, like you've got 17 ideas. How are we going to pick the ideas? Which one goes first, second, or third?
Right. Forget how much it costs. Which one are we going to even invest in at all?
That's what strategists do.
Yeah.
That's what strategists do. They help you to prioritize, pick the ideas, create a roadmap. And here's a settled truth for all your entrepreneurs out there. Sales cures almost everything. So most ideas fail because they don't have the wind, the revenue, the sales to keep them alive long enough to figure it out. So the Rainmaker, a business that can bring in new business, bring in revenue, has a much longer flight path, or runway, I should say, to get off the ground. So you have to have a great Rainmaker. You just have to. And then you need a visionary, probably one. There's enough oxygen in an advisory board for one visionary because they just take up so much oxygen in space. Guilty. And then there's seeing how technology.
That's why we're in separate places right now, because we both need additional oxygen.
We would be suffocating. We would actually be dead.
Yeah. We're not allowed. It's like a restraining order. We're not allowed.
We're not supposed to talk about that. Anyway, the futurist, the technology is a huge important play. And if you can leverage technology, you have an unfair competitive advantage. And finally, the most important person on a team, any team, is the orchestrator. This is the person that is the glue that can feel, anticipate, and remedy the drama in the room. And if you look at a Colby, I'll just give you the keys to the castle here. A Colby, you're looking for patterns. An orchestrator is like a 7-7-7-2. And that means that they can play operator, they can play strategist, they can play visionary, they can do it. They're a chameleon. They can be in a room and really feel and understand why everyone's getting excited. And they're the ones that are the most trusted people in the organization because they check in with everyone and they help unify a team. They're the glue, and they're the rarest, by the way.
Yeah, I want to say something about that real fast, because I think sometimes when we say chameleon, then people go, oh, good, that's what I want to be like. Or, oh, you shouldn't be like that because you shouldn't fake it to be around other people. And so what I want to explain here, because I've thought a lot about this, is it's called, in psychology, that's called social monitoring. And just like any other characteristic you might have, some people are high social monitors. So some people walk into a room and are like, to use current terminology, what's the vibe in here? What's going on in here? Who am I with? And if everybody's loud, they're a little louder. If everybody's quiet, they're a little quieter. If everybody's active, they're a little more active. If everybody's fun, they're a little bit more fun. If everyone's subdued, they're a little bit more subdued. Not in an inauthentic sense. They're not like, how do I trick these people into thinking that I get them? They genuinely do. And their natural, to your point about Colby, their natural response, not their fake, not their manufactured response, is to naturally, if I go back to the Midwest after living in the South now for 20 years, but growing up in Milwaukee, if I go back for 2 days, if I go back and see you, up in the Chicago area, it's 7 minutes after I land. Oh, hey there, Mike. It's so great to be back here in the Midwest. I hear we're going to have a little snow. We're going to head on out and get on our snow machines. Yeah, you immediately go to Mars Cheese Castle, you get a fried cheese curd at Culver's, and you go for it. So that's not me faking it. That's me. And oftentimes it's invisible to the person. If you told them they were doing it, oftentimes people don't know. But I just wanted to make that thing, because sometimes people go, and also I want to talk about the analogy, because we get analogies wrong all the time. So we sometimes criticize people for being a chameleon, for changing in different circumstances. And when that's inauthentic, I get it. But a chameleon's a terrible example of that. A chameleon doesn't ever change who it is. A chameleon is able to change what it looks like to match its surroundings. That's its fundamental nature. The chameleon isn't faking it. Yes, the chameleon isn't doing something other. Yeah, and that gets me riled up. Just like when we use metamorphosis. Oh, Mike, this person changed and it was a total metamorphosis. A caterpillar always turns into a butterfly. It never turns into a rhinoceros. It never turns into a giraffe. It never turns into a frog. It turns into what it was biologically designed. Yes, it is a transformation, but only within the context of what it was made to do. And so this idea that somehow the orchestrator is going to become an operator, the operator is going to become, right? That's not what we're trying to do. And that's why we do the Imperfectionist podcast. Transformation, metamorphosis, chameleon isn't what we're looking for, unless, to the point we just made, the person is in fact a chameleon, at which point they are being who they are when they adapt to situations in an almost natural and invisible way. I'm getting riled up.
You see these people, they are the most trusted person in large organizations. They tend to become head of HR, chief of staff, and then CEO in these organizations. And it's because they know where all the bodies are. And the reason they know where all the bodies are is because people trust them enough to say, hey, this is what I'm worried about. This happened to Bernie. What should I do about it? They're not faking it. It is a natural way that they were built. And I think the good news is that you can actually test for it. And having one of those people in your executive team, on your advisory board, in your forum, helps you to bust through plateaus. And importantly, it keeps bad things from happening. And I won't go there, but there are, they can get in front of some real human tragedy because they feel it, they sense it coming. Anyway.
So you said you can test for it. So that's what I was going to ask. 2 questions. How did you come up with those 6? I think you started with 2. You ended up with 6. How did you get to the point of defining those 6? Are those in one of your books? And then how do you test for it? Did you create your own test, or do you use the Colby as these numbers match kind of with these styles?
Yeah. So, I told you that visionaries are about putting together lots of information to make meaning. That's, you said this, and I saw this, and I saw a movie, and I read a book, and I said this, and at 5 I did this, so this must be true. And that's really that's the answer. We tested with Myers-Briggs, Strength Finders, DISC, hundreds of employees as they came through the Maddock Douglas, the MacGuffin, the 321 Launch is another business. Ringleader Ventures is another business ecosystem. And so I told you earlier, I had this party
Mike
trick.
spends $3 million a month just on domains that he's still holding on to from past businesses.
So I guess the Venn diagram would be test people I love and what they were really good at. And over time, I started to notice that. So
it wasn't all in a moment. You didn't sit down one day and in a beautiful mind kind of thing on a glass board, and you
have done
kind
that
of
since.
Slowly started to see it.
I have done that since. What I've done is I've crossed over different tests based. Once I had the archetypes, but the archetypes are based on looking at fast growth companies and the teams they had around the table and how they managed tension, and then going, they all so I started with, they all have an operator and a visionary. Okay, settled truth. Great companies have a great operator and a great visionary, and it's like a love affair. They fight like crazy, and they always wind up back together because they know, they recognize that their strengths are complementary to each other's weaknesses, and that they value that. But then when you look at these teams that really scale, you go, oh my gosh, and that guy is in charge of national sales. And what is he like? What does he care about? What are the things he's saying in the room? And how is it they're one step ahead in technology? And how do all these people get along? And so, I've had the great privilege of working with 25% of the Fortune 500 through Maddock Douglas in their executive suite at one point or another. Like, we need help. Come in and talk to us. Side story. I did a presentation at Nationwide Insurance to their C-suite, and 2 years later, someone said, "Hey, Mike Maddock said that," and the CEO goes, "Mike Maddock, the guy that wore jeans into the executive suite?" And I was so happy to hear him say that. By the way, he went to Iowa State, go Cyclones, because someone said to me once, "Hey, Mike, I saw you on stage. Why do you dress up to get on stage? Why are you wearing like dress clothes?" And I'm like, I don't know the answer to that. I was putting on, like, people want me to be authentic, and here I am being.
And that was the opposite. You were saying, what do these people want from me? Yeah. How can I sort of pretend that I have it when I don't, and look a part of something I'm not?
Yeah. So as soon as I noticed that, I'm like, I'm done. Now I dressed up for you today, but I'm wearing jeans and fun. Like this is my day gear. But I knew you're fancy, Dave. I know you're fancy. You're going to wear
my fancy flannel. My fancy flannel.
Yeah. So anyway, the point is that over time I was able to put these pieces together. It's a working model. I think that in 5 years, Flourish advisor boards will look different. But right now, I have been just so thrilled with the level of aha moments where people go, "Wow, I've been looking at this the wrong way. I've been trying to fix this for years, and it's because I saw the problem as a nail instead of a screw or a widget or whatever." And that's how breakthroughs happen.
Yeah, I want to use that analogy for a second too, because I actually use that in my book. So what Mike's saying is important. When you're running a business, you're going to need a hammer to look for the nails. You need a screwdriver to look for the screws. You need maybe a jackhammer to break up the concrete. There's these different tools you're going to need. However, one of the mistakes we make is someone goes, when you're a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail. And then people are like, oh, I need to be more dynamic. I need to be more active. No. And the answer is no. When you are a hammer, look for some nails. Like, I literally say that in my book. There's nothing wrong. Hammers don't need to turn into screwdrivers. And notice right. Mike didn't say that. Mike didn't say, oh, then I started trying to transform these people who weren't this thing that I needed into this thing that I needed. He said, no, I need to start identifying and locating people who are already that thing. So this is crucial. On a team, you want more than just hammers looking for nails. But when you are a hammer, don't let anybody tell you that your biggest problem is you're always finding nails. That's your job. That's called alignment. I'm a speaker. I need to find events and situations and podcasts and forums and webinars to speak at. There's nothing wrong. Oh my gosh, Dave, all you're doing is looking for speaking engagements. Right, because that's my thing, right? So don't let people tell you to stop being a hammer. But when you need to craft a team, when you need an organization, you need more than just, and to Mike's point, unfortunately, if we're not careful, we don't find people who are strong where we're weak. We find people who are just like us because they're awesome. Because we're awesome.
They laugh at our jokes.
We surround ourselves with a bunch of awesome people who can't run an organization. That's the difference. Organizations, we want diversity among the group. It doesn't have to happen within each individual. Every person doesn't need to have all of the, and that's unfortunately the mistake we make as leaders. Or we think that somehow I need to be an orchestrator. I need to be an operator. I need to be a visionary. Well, I need to be, and then you go insane trying to turn yourself into all of these different things when that's not possible.
And the slippery slope for you entrepreneurs out there is that when you start a company, it's usually just you. And so you do have to have wear all those hats, mixing metaphors now, or use all those tools or whatever. Yeah. But eventually, and here's a big insight, Dave, you and I were talking about this the other day. What I've noticed is that people devalue their superhero power. And right, you get to be about 50 years old, 45, 55, and all of a sudden you realize that all the things that were really easy for you are really hard for other people. And that was like the talent. But you like, no, we're taught, I don't want to take a page out of your book, Dave. We're taught to focus on our weaknesses. And so we don't focus on the fact that, you can fall out of bed and solve a problem that makes everyone else's head explode. But since you can do that, you want to go work on something else. And then at about 50 years old, you're like, holy mother of God, that was my brilliance. And the earlier in life you can figure out that what comes easy to you, what gives you joy, what is naturally what you were born to do, is your superhero power in your lane. And it isn't everybody else's. It's really hard for them. They can't do it. One quick story. I went back to school at Northwestern Kellogg, and it was a program where everybody had to be out in the world for 14 years to get in. So I'm sitting next to my dear friend now, Bob Wallace, Robert E. Lee Wallace. And he at the time was a CFO of a very large company. He became the chairman of Top Golf at one point. And he's sitting next to me and we're in marketing strategy. And I'm like, and he's like, like, what are you doing? I don't. And then we get into management accountant and I'm shriveled up in a ball, like in the fetal position. He's like, Mike, it's not that hard. Well, it is for me.
To me.
That's not what I was made to do, but for him. And that to me was like this big, it was such a gift. The gift was I was surrounded by people that were at the top of their game, running companies who all were really good at certain things and they sucked. And they were mature at other things. And they were a lot far enough along in their career. They're like, I don't want to do that. I suck at that.
Well, let's stop there.
Yeah,
let's stop there. That's why it's called the Imperfections Podcast. Because what some people think you need to do when you have that realization is go, and I suck at that and I need to get better at it.
Yeah.
Or I don't suck at that. No, don't tell me that it's an opportunity for me. It's a developmental, and this is something I hate about the growth mindset, although there's a lot of good parts of it. I'm not good at it yet. And that's the other thing that happens when you get older. If it hasn't happened yet, it's not going to happen. Like, let's be honest here about some of the things that are going on here. So I love that analogy. All right, we only have a couple minutes left because you have to go. And we're going to have to do this again because this is going super well, and I knew it would. But there's stuff we could talk about for hours and hours and hours. So, have you along the way thought of anybody that you are not sponsored by, and why that would be fun to tell anyone? And what would you? I've been asking questions and directing things. What would you like to say in the last couple minutes here to close us down? What is something I haven't asked, or something that you love to tell people, or something you think is important that we haven't covered yet?
Well, I want to encourage everyone that is, most of my people are running organizations, and I want to encourage you to get into a peer group one way or another. Because there are things that you need to get off your chest that feel like first world problems to your best friends from high school and your family and everyone, but they're real problems, and they're keeping you up at night, and you deserve to be surrounded by people that can give you empathy and real experience, shared experience around that. And then if you want to ladder it up, I would really encourage you to get into a group that balances the perspective, that is intentional about having a professional moderator, a professional coach, and that there are at least 6 different types of lenses in that room. And as far as sponsorship, I'll leave you with a quick story. Our mutual friend, I think, Mike Maddock, couldn't get distribution, and he wrote a book and he couldn't get distribution. So what he did is he went to all the bookstores and put the books on the shelves and let people pick up the book, bring it to the counter and have them scan it and scan it and scan it. And it wouldn't work because they hadn't bought the book. So he had thousands of books all over the country in these bookstores. And eventually the book distributor called and said, hey, people are trying to buy your books in our stores. We need to distribute them. So he did what you're doing. He reverse engineered sponsorship. And I think it's brilliant.
I love it. I love it. So Mike is not sponsored by Mike Maddock, and he's also not sponsored by Marlboro cigarettes, giving you lung cancer since 19 27. Mike, where can they find more about Flourish Advisory Boards?
Well, you can Google me, Mike Maddock, or you can Google Flourish Advisory Boards. It's flourishandvisoryboards.com.
Yeah.
And my purpose is to connect people in possibility. So if there's anyone out there that needs help with anything, I'm easy to find. Just send me a note and I'll help you out.
And that's Maddock, Maddock. Mike, are those 6 types in any of your books? Free the Idea Monkey is the one book. Plan D is the other book. Do they find that on the website? Is there some place they can get that?
Yeah, sorry to step on you. I talk about them in Plan D, but if you go up to flourishandvisoryboards.com, I have a quick questionnaire that'll pop up and it'll tell you what type you're in. Yes, I answer 8 questions and it'll tell you what seat you're in.
And one last thing that I want to say on my side is, once again, we are not sponsored by Liquid Death Mountain Water. This is the pint of no return. It's wonderful. I do have to wash it by hand, which I don't love, but that's because it's got wonderful gold accents.
Love you, Dave. Thank you.
Delicious and refreshing. But I do want to reinforce one last thing about Mike, which is he's talked so much about awareness. That's the first principle of Amplify, of Imperfections podcast. Check out the Colby if you haven't. Check out the Strengths Finders if you haven't. There's free versions of Enneagram. There's free versions of MBTI. And don't just take one. One isn't better. They're all different ways to understand yourself. The more you understand yourself, your strengths and your weaknesses, the more effective you can be. Thank you very much for joining us, Mike. This has been the Imperfectionist Podcast. We will be back for more episodes here in 2025 with more amazing guests like Mike. Thank you very much.